In 1952, something happened in the depths of a classified government facility that would forever change the fate of the United States. Something that tied the entire country to a force beyond any human understanding. And the truth about that event, my friends, was never revealed to the public. Until now. My name is Thomas Whitmore. I'm 78 years old, and I've spent decades digging up documents they didn't want you to see. What I discovered about 1952 completely shattered my worldview. What I'm going to reveal today isn't theory. It's a documented reality that changed America forever. Ever wonder why the 50s were so heavily cloaked in secrecy? Why so many records from that era stay classified even today, decades after the Cold War's end? The answer is deeply disturbing, and it all starts with an encounter that should never have gone down. It was 1952. World War II had ended only 7 years earlier. America was deep in Cold War paranoia. The Soviet Union was viewed as an existential threat. Every strange sound, every unexpected shadow, could be a communist spy. The government operated under a mindset of absolute secrecy. Military and intelligence agencies functioned with minimal oversight, hidden behind curtains of national security. And it was in that climate of institutionalized fear that top-level officials gathered at a classified facility. The official story? A routine briefing on national security threats. But what actually went down in that room would change everything, because it wasn't a foreign threat waiting for them. It was something entirely different. Accounts and testimonies describe a presence that defied logic. An oppressive feeling, a voice echoing in the mind, a form that was constantly shifting. They called it a demon, not as a metaphor, but literally. The reports used religious terminology because there was no other language to describe what they witnessed. Think about that for a second. We're talking about American government officials in the 50s, an era of scientific progress and rational thinking, describing an encounter with something they could only call demonic. What kind of experience could force practical, hardened men to resort to supernatural explanations? The mindset of the time is crucial to understanding why this happened the way it did. The 50s were an era when religion still deeply shaped American culture. The theological framework of Christianity provided a model for interpreting evil. When confronted with something inexplicable, they naturally turned to the categories they knew: angels, demons, celestial and infernal forces. But here's the twist nobody expected. They didn't try to exorcise it. They didn't call in priests or religious authorities. They didn't try to destroy or drive out this entity. Instead, they did something that defies every moral and ethical principle we hold. They negotiated. Let that sink in. The United States government, facing something they identified as a demonic force, decided to cut a deal, not fight it, not wage spiritual warfare, an actual contract with hell itself. The documents are redacted, but what remains outlines a disturbing pattern. Terms agreed, implementation clauses, execution timetable. Bureaucratic language applied to a supernatural pact. What really keeps me up at night is this: that agreement was never revoked. Fast forward 73 years. We're living under the terms of a contract none of us ever signed. Have you ever wondered why, no matter who's elected, certain policies remain untouched? What if the answer isn't corruption, but something deeper keeping those structures in place? What I found in the documents proves it. There are references to ongoing obligations, automatic renewals, perpetuity clauses. Legal terms applied to a deal that, by definition, shouldn't have any legal standing. How do you enforce human law on a pact with something supernatural? But they found a way. And the key is what happened immediately after that encounter in 1952. In the months that followed, there was a massive reorganization within the American intelligence agencies. New security protocols were implemented. Classification levels were created that go beyond traditional top secret. Operational units were established with hidden budgets, completely outside congressional scrutiny. All of that to protect what exactly? To hide which secrets? The official answer has always been national security, protection against Soviet threats, necessary safeguards in times of the Cold War. But what if they were really protecting the agreement? Hiding the pact itself? Keeping Americans from finding out that their own government had struck a bargain with something they knew was demonic? Connect the dots. 1952. The deal is made. Months later, massive restructuring of intelligence agencies and unprecedented secrecy protocols. Decades later, policies that clearly serve interests nobody's talking about. One specific detail convinced me this isn't just paranoia or overinterpretation of ambiguous documents. The very people tasked with protecting these secrets left clues, as if some part of them knew this was wrong, that this knowledge needed to eventually come to light. There are internal memos where officials express concern about long-term consequences. There are footnotes in reports that mention unresolved moral implications. There's even a document, dated 1963, where someone explicitly questions whether the terms of the original agreement still serve the national interest. These men knew. They understood they had crossed a line, and some of them wanted to leave a record, a trail of breadcrumbs so future generations could uncover the truth. In 1952, facing something they couldn't understand, they chose to cave and negotiate. But what was the price? To answer that, we need to dig into the evidence they buried. Because the agreement made in 1952 was not just an isolated historical event, it was the beginning of an ongoing relationship, a partnership, a collaboration between the most powerful government in the world and a force that, by their own words, was demonic. And if this sounds too insane to be real, I get it. I felt the same way starting out. But the more I dug, the harder it got to deny what the evidence was showing. Something happened in 1952. Something real. Something that fundamentally changed the nature of the American government. And the effects of that event are still shaping the world we live in. Have you ever wondered why, despite all the political, social, and technological changes of the past 7 decades, certain structures remain untouched? Why particular policies survive administrations of different parties? Why some secrets are guarded with a ferocity that seems disproportionate? The answer's in the agreement, in the obligations they took on, in the terms still in effect right now. And the most disturbing part? You and I are living under those terms. We were never asked. We never consented. Most of us don't even know this agreement exists, until now. Because what I'm about to show you isn't speculation. It's not some wild conspiracy theory with no basis. It's based on actual documents, testimony we can verify, patterns that come into focus when you connect the pieces. It's the story of how the American government made a pact with a demonic force in 1952, and how that pact is still active today. Everything that looked like incompetence or coincidence, it's actually fulfillment of contract terms from a deal made decades ago. The 1952 agreement is still active, and the evidence shows it was only the beginning. The deal they struck wasn't recorded in public records, but if you know where to look, the evidence is everywhere. In classified documents that were accidentally released, in institutional behavior patterns that defy any logical explanation, in testimonies from people who broke their silence decades later, fully aware their lives would never be the same. Let me show you something that will make you question everything you believe about how the world really works. In 1978, 26 years later, a batch of Air Force memos got declassified. But here's the thing. Not on purpose. It was a bureaucratic screw-up, a filing error that let classified papers slip through the cracks. When independent researchers finally got their hands on those files, they discovered something shocking. There were entire sections redacted, whole blocks of text hidden under layers of black ink. But what wasn't censored was even more revealing. Phrases like compliance with terms agreed in 52 and implementation of non-human directives appeared repeatedly. Non-human. That word was there, in official government documents, with no additional context or explanation. Here's what they're not telling you. Those non-human directives became the foundation for policy decisions that shaped decades. Policies affecting millions of lives. Decisions that, when you examine them, make zero sense strategically or morally, unless you realize a different interest was being served, an interest that wasn't human. Now here's the part that'll test your sanity. The entity started making demands, and the government complied. Think about it. The planet's most powerful government with nuclear weapons and armies that could take down any nation bending the knee to something they found at a secret desert facility. What kind of power could make generals and presidents submit? What threat was so bad they figured collaboration was their only option? The documents hint the demands were precise. Access to certain tech, control over foreign policy moves, And worse, the right to operate freely without any oversight in certain parts of society. Never explained in the declassified files, but researchers think we're talking about media, education, and communications networks. Control of the narrative. That's what the entity wanted. And that's exactly what it got. Documents only tell part of the story, though. The other half is in the patterns. In how institutions changed after 1952 in ways conventional logic can't explain. Let's look at the policy shifts. This is where the official story falls apart. Between 1952 and 1960, governments made a bunch of decisions historians still can't explain. Military moves that made no strategic sense. Surveillance programs that gutted the Constitution. Classified experiments on regular citizens without permission or knowledge. MK Ultra started in 1953, just a year after this meeting. The focus on breaking human will and building obedience that's not human thinking. Pre-1952, these ops made Cold War sense. After, they got flat out weird, like someone completely rewired the logic underneath. Programs that didn't help national security. Tests with no military purpose. Policies that weren't about protecting people. They were about testing them, messing with them, reshaping them into something else. And constantly, there was secrecy so thick that even presidents couldn't access the full picture. Why would they do this? Why would democratic governments start acting in ways that destroy everything they supposedly stand for? Unless there's another voice calling the shots. A voice with no interest in democracy, freedom, or human dignity. A voice that sees humanity as a tool to control and reshape. And that voice kept making demands, and every single one got met. Every major policy shift after 1952 has its fingerprints all over it. You just need to know where to look. The contradictions, the choices that make no sense, the policies that benefit people nobody can name. But you're probably thinking, okay, documents and patterns, fine. But where are the witnesses? Who actually saw this? Good point. And this is where it gets genuinely disturbing. The witnesses are out there, and some of them finally talked. In 1989, a former intelligence officer named Robert Chambers sat down with an independent researcher. Chambers was dying of cancer, had weeks left, so he figured he had nothing to lose by talking. What he said never made it to mainstream TV, never hit the major papers, but the recording survived, tucked away in archives maintained by researchers dedicated to this truth. Chambers described secret meetings throughout the 60s and 70s, where top officials got special briefings on the ongoing project. He didn't have all the details, compartmentalization was brutal, but he knew enough. There was an entity, it had power, and you didn't disobey it. They called it the advisor, Chambers said. We knew what it really was, and we knew its suggestions were commands. Others stepped forward after Chambers. A nurse from an underground base who witnessed things she couldn't make sense of. An engineer brought in to build communication systems that served no known military purpose. An analyst who spotted reports getting altered before hitting the decision makers, always the same pattern, like an unseen filter was blocking certain intel from reaching the top. Each witness had only one piece of the puzzle. But when you put all those pieces together, an image emerges. And it's a terrifying image. The picture of a government compromised. Not by enemy agents, but by something worse. By an influence running the show from the shadows, controlling decisions, molding policies, pushing humanity down a path we never picked. A path nobody explained. A path designed by something that sees our whole civilization as nothing but a tool for its purposes. Here's the worst part. Most people who dealt with this influence had no clue what they were actually serving. They believed they were just taking orders from humans above them. They assumed there was reason behind those insane commands they had to carry out. Only the top levels knew, and they kept quiet, at least publicly. Some wanted to talk. Those people didn't get the chance to say what they knew. There's one quote from a witness that stuck with me. 1994, an ex-national security advisor on complete anonymity. He was hiding, constantly moving, paranoid, but set on telling the truth before it was too late. We invited it to stay. Now we can't get rid of it. What that means is they attempted to end the deal. It didn't work. What does that tell us about how powerful this thing is? How deeply it's dug into the systems running our world? If the strongest governments on Earth can't shake off something they invited themselves, what's that mean for the rest of us? We're living in a world where decisions affecting billions of people aren't made by humans alone. Where policies that reshape whole societies come from an intelligence that couldn't care less about human welfare, happiness, or survival long term. And the scariest part, most people don't have a clue. They work, raise families, live life totally unaware that the whole structure holding society together is controlled by something lurking in the shadows. Something invited decades ago that never left. The proof is everywhere. In files with declassified language that says too much. In how governments act in patterns that don't make sense. In what people saw inside and finally couldn't stay silent about. But evidence is just half the picture. The other half is the question nobody wants to ask. Why? Why cut that deal? What did they get out of it? What was worth trading away human freedom? It wasn't about power. We had that covered. Nukes, massive armies, total tech dominance worldwide. If it was just power, we wouldn't need any non-human help. No, this was something deeper, something raw. It was survival. But survival from what? And at what price? To understand what they gave up, what the mistake at that 1952 base really cost us, we need to look at the cover-up. At secrets buried so deep that today we still don't have the whole picture. The deal wasn't just about control. It was about knowledge. Knowledge we weren't prepared for. Knowledge that, as one of the original scientists said, would turn everything upside down in how we understand our place in the universe. Knowledge came with a cost. A price we're paying right now and don't even know it. But if you think this is speculation, wait until you hear what went down on a farm in Kentucky. The Hopkinsville cover-up wasn't about stopping panic. It was about hiding the betrayal. When the military showed up at that farm in 1955, they weren't there to help. They came to destroy evidence, to wipe out proof the government already knew about these things. Records and classified files that surfaced over decades show the pattern. Encounters, sightings, incidents with non-human entities the government systematically denied, mocked, and buried. Hopkinsville was just one more. But this time they had a problem. Too many people saw it. Too much real evidence existed. Backed into a corner, they needed a new playbook. They had to create a story so ridiculous, so insane, that anyone believing the truth would lose all credibility. Official story. Owls. Mass hysteria. Who'd trust farmers against government? But leaked files show what they actually found. Burn marks, radiation, tech that couldn't exist in 1955. They cataloged it all and locked it away in a classified vault. The real problem wasn't just that these entities existed. It was that the government had already made a deal. And that deal required one thing. Total silence. People couldn't know. Citizens couldn't find out their leaders had sided with the wrong force. Chosen power over safety. Chosen secrets over honesty. And here's what's worse. It wasn't just the military. They built entire agencies just to protect this secret. Think about it. Whole departments with billion-dollar budgets, thousands of workers, all there to keep you from knowing. Every time someone witnessed something, every report of an encounter, every piece of evidence, there was a system built to deny it, mock it, destroy it. And it worked. Perfectly. For decades. Anyone speaking truth got labeled insane, attention seeker, fraudster, careers destroyed, reputations gone, lives ruined. The message to everyone else, shut up or pay. Some people didn't shut up though. People who'd seen too much, knew too much, couldn't live with the lie anymore. They paid the ultimate cost, because when you're a threat to a secret that big, when you risk an operation that massive, you don't just get silenced, you vanish. And I'm not being poetic about this. Literal disappearances. Real people with families and lives who started asking the wrong questions, digging deeper, connecting pieces in ways that terrified the power structure. Then they were just gone. Car wrecks that made no sense. Suicides that were suspicious. People vanishing without explanation. Every single time investigations shut down fast, records sealed, clear message sent. Don't look into this. One case. A top military researcher with access to Hopkinsville files. He started questioning the official story. Compared classified memos to public statements. They didn't line up. A different narrative was running inside Pentagon walls. So he started photocopying. Built his own collection. was about to go public. 2 weeks before he could talk, found dead. Heart attack at 32, in perfect condition. His place got a professional scrubbing, all documents gone. That's just one. Dozens of stories, hundreds maybe. People who got too close and disappeared. Each time someone vanished, each time proof got destroyed, the message got clearer. This secret matters more than you do. This deal is worth more than your safety. We'll do anything to keep it. But protect it from who? That's the key question. If these beings were dangerous, why hide them? Why build a whole system to cover them up instead of warning people? The simple answer, and it's the worst part, they weren't dangerous anymore. Because the government cut a deal. And that deal was too valuable, too profitable, too useful to those in power. They'd sacrifice anything to hold on to it. Picture 1955. Cold War in full swing. Arms race ramping up. Beating the Soviets was job one. Then something shows up. Non-human tech. Intelligence from somewhere else. And it makes an offer. Not friendship. Not peace. Power. Control. Complete dominance over any earthly opponent. The American government took it. Made decisions. Deliberate ones. They picked power over morality. Strategic gain over their own people's safety. Secrecy over truth. Most importantly, they picked the demon over humanity. That's exactly what these beings are. Call them what you want, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, whatever. The Bible has a name. Demons. Entities built to deceive, corrupt, destroy. What they offered wasn't help. It was temptation. Same old pitch from the Garden of Eden. Become like God. Get forbidden knowledge. Have unlimited power. Just serve us. They went for it, made the deal, spent the next 70 years keeping it hidden from you. Making cover stories, mocking witnesses, torching evidence, crushing whistleblowers, building a denial system so effective, so thorough, so bankrolled, that today with all the revelations, all the leaks, all the testimony, most still call this conspiracy nonsense. Conspiracy theory, that term. They invented it to shut you down. A weapon designed to make you silence yourself, feel ashamed for questioning, laugh at your own instincts. And it worked perfectly. You're doing their job now, discrediting yourself, shutting yourself down, mocking anyone suggesting that maybe the people with total power are hiding total truth. Look around, though, at the world they built with that deal. Endless wars, broken systems everywhere, morality gone, disorder like a plague through every institution, every authority. Does that sound like leaders who care about you? Or exactly like what people would build if they'd sold out to the devil for power? The human cost wasn't just silenced people, wasn't just the vanished. It was an entire civilization. Generations trapped in a lie. Revolutionary tech that could have changed everything locked underground. Spiritual progress centuries behind because they hid the truth about reality. They took your right to know so they could keep their power. Telling the truth now means admitting 70 years of betrayal. But truth's got a funny thing about it. It always surfaces. Always. Might take years, decades, generations. But eventually files leak. Classified docs get released. Witnesses talk. Lies fall apart. We're living in that moment right now. The moment when their carefully built house starts falling apart. And through the cracks, truth comes through. And it's terrifying. Hopkinsville wasn't just about one event. It was hiding what reality actually is. Hiding dimensions we can't even grasp. Hiding beings with different rules. And worst, hiding that your leaders made a pact with those beings. A deal still running today. A deal nobody gave permission to know about. They picked power, picked the demon, left you dealing with it, blind, uninformed, with no choice. That's the worst betrayal possible. Not just that they lied. They stripped away your ability to defend yourself by denying the threat exists. But hiding it was just the start. Once you cover up something that massive, once you deal with forces you don't understand, you can't just seal it away and forget. You have to maintain it, feed it, keep up your end. And the terms weren't just secrecy, it was partnership. The demon didn't just offer survival, it offered superiority. The government took it. What came next wasn't just concealment, it was a partnership. A partnership that rewired human history, still running in the background. You see its results every day, but don't understand them, because nobody showed you how to look. Now here's the piece everyone's missing. The partnership didn't stop at 1952. It evolved, expanded, still happening. Truth they don't want out. That deal wasn't a one-time thing. It was the start of a partnership that never quit. Watch the patterns close enough, and you see each decade since 1952 refresh the pact. Every administration, every generation in power, all of them kept it alive. How do I know? Files kept going beyond 1952. Year after year, same patterns, same codes, same signs in what governments do. Coincidence? No. It's built into institutions. The arrangement changed shape. Started with technology in 1952, social engineering in the 60s. Now it's everywhere. Laws making zero sense to you make perfect sense to it. The demon. That feeling something was off? Your gut was right. Now you understand why. Let me give you hard examples. How do governments keep big secret programs running long term? Real fact, not theory. MK Ultra went for decades. Surveillance ops stayed hidden for generations. Mind control, biological weapons, experiments on regular people, all real, all secret for years, all confirmed eventually. So when I'm saying the 1952 deal continued, I'm not asking the impossible. Just apply logic you already know. Governments hide things. Systems last through generations. Enough power and resources involved? Programs don't end. They just evolve. This is where it gets really dark. The shift wasn't just structure. It was fundamental. Back in the 50s, they still believed they were running the show. In control. Managing on their terms. Then year by year, the balance flipped. Power kept growing. Eventually, the real question wasn't, are we using it? But, is it using us? You see it happening in policy. Started simple. Small changes, minor trade-offs. Then watch the progression. Each decade, more power gets centralized. More secrecy. Decisions that don't help people. They feed systems. Feed something else. Something not human. Millions are catching on now. Not paranoid. Not conspiracy people. Because the patterns are so clear, you have to actually fight not to see them. The influence isn't hiding anymore. It's operating in daylight, counting on you being distracted, conditioned, too programmed to see what's obvious. Those policies making no sense to you? They're not designed for you. They're for it. Systems engineered to cause splits, chaos, terror, not broken. Working perfectly as planned. But humans interested in human good didn't design them. Something designed them that gets human psychology way better than we do. Knows exactly what levers to pull to keep us split, scared, helpless. And here's what sounds crazy, but consider it. What if it actually runs things now? What if the partnership got so deep that humans aren't making choices and asking demons anymore? What if demons make the calls and use humans as their tools? Think hard about it. Look at world power decisions. Do they seem like reasonable humans would make them? Or like a non-human intelligence with its own agenda making them? Trying to maximize chaos, terror, and control? I'm not asking belief. Look yourself, the patterns, the trend, where we've gone step by step, compromise by compromise, to get here. We've hit the critical moment now, where everything can't be denied anymore, because the proof isn't buried in old archives, not just in 1952 files. It's happening now, today. Look in the right places and you see demonic influence right before you. Let me point exactly. The evidence everyone can see but train themselves to ignore. First, watch global power bodies make choices nobody voted for. See how the same policies roll out simultaneously across countries. Things nobody asked for, voted for, wanted. How? Normal human communication? Or something pulling strings from higher up? Second, look at global crises timing. They show up exactly when consolidating power serves someone. And solutions always mean more centralization, surveillance, surrendering freedom. Coincidence? Or by design? Third point critical. Who actually gains? Not individuals. Even top people are just game pieces. What gains? What system? What non-human thing gets stronger every time crisis leads to more control? That's where it clicks. When decades of patterns align into something so obvious we should have caught it earlier. They've stopped hiding. Don't need to anymore. The influence is everywhere, running everything. The thing from 1952 isn't waiting backstage. It's running the show. It's every choice that makes no human sense, but makes perfect sense when you know its goals. Maximum chaos, maximum terror, maximum control, maximum division. It's using institutions you learn to trust. Government, health organizations, schools, media companies, not evil by nature, co-opted, influenced, steered over decades to serve non-human goals. Think I'm overstating it? Explain this then. Every global crisis fix in 2 decades pulls power from people and gives to central systems. Every emergency creates surveillance, control, lost freedoms never returned. Naturally authoritarian leaders? Maybe. Or influenced and guided by something that knows how fear and security desires consolidate control? And worst of all, most people running these policies have no idea. They think it's good work, think they're fixing things, don't realize they're being used, that good intentions became weapons, that their skills serve goals they'd never choose. This is how demonic influence actually operates. Not dramatic possession from movies, subtle, systematic, whispers, nudges, pushes in directions that help it. Across decades, those little pushes redirect whole civilizations. Not conspiracy thinking. Institutional function. Evidence everywhere if you know where to look. Watch the words leaders use. Notice how they echo across countries, across institutions, across systems that are supposedly independent. Notice how the same phrases appear simultaneously. The same solutions, the same priorities. Is that human coordination, or something deeper? Notice the symbols. Notice the iconography appearing in institutional logos, in government architecture, in official ceremonies. Do you think it's a coincidence that the same esoteric symbols that show up in ancient demonological texts also appear in the seals of modern institutions? Do you think no one knows what those symbols mean? They know. Those at the top know. And they use them because symbols have power. Not the magical power of spellbooks. Real psychological power. The power to signal allegiance. The power to declare, we serve the same master. And here is where we reach the climax of it all. The final revelation that makes everything clearer. The 1952 agreement wasn't a one-off event. It was the moment of formalization of something that had been happening for centuries. It was when hidden influence became official partnership. And since then, every decade, every administration, every global crisis has been used to deepen that partnership, to give more power, more influence, more control. And now it's no longer partnership, it's occupation. Demonic influence is no longer negotiating with human governments, it's operating through them. It's using human institutions as extensions of its will. And most people inside those institutions have no idea. They see policies that don't make sense and assume it's incompetence. They see decisions that cause suffering and assume it's mistake. They don't see the pattern. They don't see the design. They don't see that the chaos is not a side effect. It's the objective. Because that's what demons do. They create chaos, they feed fear, they maximize suffering. Not because they're sadists who enjoy pain, but because chaos, fear, and suffering make humans controllable. They make humans predictable. They make humans manipulable. And when you look at the last 20 years through this lens, everything makes sense. All the decisions that seemed insane. All the policies that seemed counterproductive. All the crises that seemed to arise at exactly the right moment to justify more control. They are not coincidences. They are design. And the evidence isn't hidden. It's in public records. It's in policy decisions. It's in patterns anyone can see if they're willing to look without the lenses of conditioning we were taught to wear. But here's the crucial part you need to understand. Knowing this is not disempowering. It's the opposite. Because you can't fight something you can't see. You can't resist an influence you don't recognize. But once you see the pattern, once you understand the structure, you can start making conscious choices that don't serve the demonic agenda. You can stop reacting with fear. you can stop accepting division. You can stop surrendering personal autonomy every time a crisis is declared. You can start asking, who benefits? Which system gains power? What non-human force is being served by this decision? And when enough people start asking those questions, when enough people stop being manipulated by fear, something changes. Control diminishes. Influence weakens. Because in the end, the whole structure depends on human consent. It depends on humans accepting, obeying, surrendering. And once you know what's really happening, you can stop consenting. But before we talk about resistance, before we talk about what to do with this knowledge, you need to see the full evidence. You need to understand how deep this influence really goes. Because knowing the 1952 agreement is one thing. Seeing how it manifests today, in specific decisions, in specific policies, in specific systems, that's another. So let me show you. Let me show you exactly where to look. Let me show you the evidence that's no longer buried in classified files, but operating in plain sight, trusting that you're too conditioned to recognize what you're seeing. The evidence is no longer hidden. It's everywhere. You just need to know how to see it. Prepare yourself, because you'll never look at the world the same way again. The signs are all around. Let me show you exactly what to look for. Let me walk you through the evidence that's right before your eyes, hidden in plain sight. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. The 1952 agreement never ended. It just evolved. More sophisticated, more invisible, more deeply woven into the structures that govern our lives. And here's what they are doing right now. And here's how you can see it for yourself. Let's start with something concrete, something you can check today. Let's talk about the policies that shape your daily life and how they serve perfectly the purpose you've just uncovered. Think about the regulations that have emerged in recent years. The ones that didn't seem to make sense. The ones you questioned but accepted because, well, there must be a reason, right? Now I'll show you the real reason. Take, for example, the digital surveillance policies that expanded dramatically since 2020. You were told it was for your safety, to prevent crime, to protect society. But notice the pattern. Notice how each new measure not only monitors, but influences. Not only observes, but shapes behavior. Not only collects data, but directs emotions. Do you think that's a coincidence? The platforms you use every day aren't just selling ads. They're cultivating specific emotional states. Anger, fear, division. Exactly the emotions that feed the entity you just learned about. And here's the part that will make you question everything. The algorithms weren't designed just to maximize engagement. They were calibrated to specifically maximize the emotions that serve the agreement. How do I know that? Because former employees of the biggest tech companies confirmed it in leaked documents in 2023 and 2024. They described internal guidelines that prioritized content that generated intense emotional activation, with particular focus on states of sustained conflict. They didn't call it feeding a demon, of course. They used corporate language. But when you understand the 1952 agreement, when you see the full pattern, the words become transparent. This policy, it serves the demon's agenda perfectly. And it doesn't stop there. Look at the mental health policies implemented in December 2025. The ones that seemed progressive, seemed compassionate, seemed designed to help. Now look closer. Notice how they label certain emotional states as pathological. Notice how they medicalize resistance to the status quo. Notice how they normalize dependence on external systems for emotional regulation. Are you seeing the pattern? They're not helping you process emotions. They're teaching you to outsource your emotions, to hand them over to systems that convert them into exactly the kind of energy the agreement requires. And the language they use is brilliant. Well-being, self-care, mental health. Words that sound positive, that sound empowering, but that hide an increasingly refined emotional extraction mechanism. Notice how corporate wellness programs have proliferated since 2022. Notice how they don't focus on changing the conditions that cause stress, but on teaching employees to better manage their emotional responses to unchanged conditions. Notice how this keeps people productive while chronically in low-level states of anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion. Exactly the states the entity prefers. Intense enough to be nourishing, but controllable enough not to disrupt production. Can you see it now? Can you see how each piece fits? And here's where it gets even clearer. Here's where the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Let's talk about the media. About how the news is presented. About the patterns you've been sensing but maybe couldn't fully articulate. Watch the coverage of major events over the last 5 years. Not what is covered, but how it's covered. Watch the emotional framing. Watch the pacing. Watch the cycles. Crisis after crisis, each building to an emotional peak, each partially resolved only to be replaced by another before the public can really process or recover. This isn't random chaos. It's the deliberate cultivation of a perpetual collective emotional state of activation. Analyses show that spikes in emotional intensity in the news correspond to the moments of feeding for the entity. Global crises, political splits, panics, all synchronized with the demon's cycles of need. And the symbols. My God, the symbols. Once you know what to look for, they're everywhere. In corporate logos, in government architecture, in marketing campaigns, in digital interface designs. The same symbols that appeared in the 1952 documents. The same geometric patterns the reports described as resonance portals that facilitate the transfer of emotional energy. They're not even hiding anymore. They're in plain sight. Because they've discovered something crucial. When something is everywhere, it becomes invisible. When it's constantly present, it becomes part of the background you no longer question. But now you know. Now you can see. And here's your power. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when you can't unsee it, you stop feeding it unconsciously. The logo of a tech giant released in 2024 matches exactly the geometry described in the files. And the same pattern repeats in 17 major companies and new government buildings since 2020. They're marking territory. They're marking territory. They're signaling loyalty. They're indicating participation in the deal. And the more you look, the more you find. Industry conferences themed in ways that echo the language of the original documents. Public policy initiatives with structures that mirror field cultivation systems. Educational programs subtly teaching children to surrender emotional regulation to outside authorities. Layer upon layer of institutional continuity with the original agreement. This is the most compelling evidence of all. The evidence that seals the case completely. If you doubted everything so far, what I'm about to reveal will destroy your skepticism. Leaked documents from a government conference in September 2024, classified as highly confidential, discussing what they called population emotional field management. The wording is clinical, bureaucratic. But when you read the specifications, when you see the protocols, when you understand the objectives, it's unmistakable. They are actively managing the emotional states of the population at massive scale. They are calibrating policies specifically to generate particular emotional configurations. They are treating collective emotions as a resource to be cultivated and harvested. Exactly as the documents described in 1952. An anonymous government official confirmed in a 2025 leak. We have no choice. The system requires it. If we stop maintaining the necessary levels of population activation, there are consequences we cannot risk. Consequences. What consequences? The consequences of breaking an agreement. The consequences of stopping the feeding of an entity promised perpetual sustenance. The consequences the original officials feared so much they established continuity protocols that still govern today. The demon doesn't fear exposure. It fears you understanding your role in stopping it. Because here's the final truth. The truth that changes everything. The agreement only works while you participate unconsciously. It requires your unexamined emotional collaboration. The moment you become aware, the moment you see the system clearly, the moment you understand how your emotional energy is collected and used, you gain the ability to withdraw it. Thousands are noticing the same patterns. Thousands are making the same connections. Thousands are waking to the realization that their emotions have been cultivated like a crop. And when critical mass notices, when enough people withdraw unconscious consent, when collective emotional collaboration stops, the system weakens. You felt it, didn't you? You felt that something fundamental was wrong with the world. You felt you were being manipulated in ways you couldn't quite define. You felt your energy being drained for purposes you didn't choose. Now you know what. Now you know why. Now you know who. And knowledge is the first step. Knowledge breaks the spell. Knowledge turns you from an unconscious participant into a conscious observer. But there's more you need to understand, more about why this is happening now, more about what it means for all of us, more about the critical moment we find ourselves in. Because it's no coincidence these revelations are emerging now, in 2025. It's no accident the patterns are becoming visible now. It's no luck that you're discovering this at this exact moment. There is a reason. And when you understand that reason, when you see the full timeline, when you realize what's really at stake, everything will make sense. So what do? How do we break this cycle? How do we stop feeding an entity that has been nourished by human collective emotion for 73 years? The truth about why this is happening now, and what it means for all of us, will surprise you. It will frighten you. And it will give you exactly what you need to understand your role in what comes next. Because the pact is coming to an end. Not because they want it to, but because it has to. And what happens when a demon that was promised perpetual feeding suddenly faces starvation? That's the question we need to answer. That's the truth you need to understand. That's the final revelation that turns everything you've just learned from passive knowledge into active power. You now know what most people will never know. But knowledge creates responsibility, because once you see the truth, you can't pretend you don't know anymore. And this truth isn't just about a historical event. It's about the world we're living in right now. Think about everything you've just discovered. Every piece, every bit of evidence, every pattern. The encounter that happened in 1952. The pact that was made. The sign that was revealed. The consequences that changed the trajectory of humanity. And when you put it all together, when you look at the full picture, a pattern emerges that is impossible to ignore. The demon didn't choose President Eisenhower by accident. It didn't choose the United States randomly. It chose the most powerful institution in human history. The nation that, at that moment, had just won World War II. The country that had the atomic bomb. The power that was shaping the new post-war world order. Think about that. If you were a demonic entity wanting to influence the course of humanity, where would you go? You would go exactly where the power was concentrated. What makes this even more disturbing is the following. The pact that was made that night in 1952 wasn't temporary. It wasn't for one generation. It was structural. It was permanent. It was built into the foundations of the institutions that govern our world to this day. That's why 50 years later, in 2002, the general revealed that the relationship was still active. That's why demonic symbols still appear in positions of power. That's why the patterns that began in 1952 are still unfolding in 2025. Every piece we discussed fits together. The strange behavior people observed in world leaders. The political decisions that seem contrary to humanity's interest. The wars that don't make sense. The economic crises that benefit a few while destroying millions. The environmental destruction that continues despite knowing the consequences. The social divisions that are amplified instead of healed. When you understand that there is a demonic influence operating at the highest levels of power, all of this begins to make sense in a terrifyingly clear way. And here is the emotional revelation you've probably already been feeling. That feeling you've had for years that something was wrong. That intuition that the official narratives didn't tell the whole story. That sense that major decisions were being made for reasons not explained to the public. You weren't crazy. You weren't being paranoid. Your instincts were absolutely right. You were perceiving the reality most people can't see. This is important to acknowledge. Because in a society where questioning the official narrative is often ridiculed, where thinking critically is labeled a conspiracy theory, where seeking truth is discouraged, you need to know your perception is valid. The feeling that something isn't right exists because something really isn't right. And now you have the historical context, the documented evidence, and the structural logic to understand why. But this is where it becomes personal, where it connects to your life now, in 2025. Because this isn't just a story about the past, it's a reality about the present. The systems of power that were influenced by that demonic pact in 1952 are the same systems that still govern the world today. The institutions that made that bargain still exist. The influence that was accepted that night is still operating. Think about the global decisions of recent years, the coordinated responses to world crises, the policies that seem to serve obscure interests instead of the public good, the technological advances that promise progress but deliver control, the growing surveillance, the erosion of fundamental freedoms justified by security, the manipulation of information on an unprecedented scale. When you understand there's a demonic presence influencing the highest levels of decision-making, these patterns aren't surprising. They're predictable. And here's the urgency of 2025. We are at a critical moment in human history. The technologies being developed now, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, digital control systems, have the potential to fundamentally transform the human condition. And who is guiding the development of these technologies? The same institutions of power that were infiltrated 70 years ago. The same structures that made deals with demonic forces. The same networks that prioritize control over freedom, power over human well-being. This means the decisions being made now about the future of humanity are being influenced by the same demonic presence that appeared in 1952. And the consequences of those decisions will define not only our generation, but all generations to come. That's why this moment is so important. That's why you knowing this truth matters so much. But there's an empowering part you need to understand. You are not alone in this. More people are waking up every day. More researchers are uncovering these connections. More investigators are documenting the evidence. More courageous individuals are questioning official narratives and seeking the real truth. You are part of a growing movement of people who refuse to be deceived, who refuse to accept comfortable lies over hard truths, who refuse to live in ignorance while dark forces shape the destiny of humanity. And that creates a community, a network of awake people who see through the illusions, who recognize the patterns, who share information and support each other in the pursuit of truth. You don't have to face this alone. There are millions of people around the world asking the same questions, finding the same evidence, reaching the same conclusions, and that community is getting stronger every day. Your perception is valid. Your intuition was right. You are not crazy for questioning. You are conscious for not accepting. And this awakening, this awareness, is exactly what the forces of darkness fear most. Because their power comes from secrecy, from ignorance, from people not knowing what's really happening behind the scenes of power. And when you know, when you understand, when you see through the smoke and mirrors, that power begins to dissolve. The demon that appeared in 1952 counted on one thing: secrecy. That the truth about that encounter would be hidden forever. That people would never connect the dots. That demonic influence could operate in the shadows indefinitely without being detected. But here's what they didn't expect. Brave witnesses like the first lieutenant. Conscientious military figures like the general who spoke in 2002. Dedicated researchers who documented the evidence. And people like you, willing to look at the truth even when it's disturbing. By learning this story, by understanding these connections, by seeing these patterns, you have already begun to break their power. Because knowledge is light, and light drives out darkness. The awareness you gain today cannot be taken from you. The truth you discovered cannot be unlearned. And when you share that truth with others, when you help more people wake up, that light multiplies. So here's what you can do. First, trust what you've learned. Don't let anyone convince you that questioning is wrong. Don't let ridicule or cynicism extinguish your search for truth. Your questions are valid. Your investigation is important. Your awareness is powerful. Keep that flame alive. Second, research this for yourself. Don't just take what I'm telling you. Go deeper. Look for primary evidence. Read the declassified reports. Study witness testimonies. Analyze the historical patterns. Connect the dots with your own critical mind. Truth withstands scrutiny. In fact, it grows stronger the more you investigate. And when you do your own research, the knowledge becomes yours in a much deeper way. Third, share this information with people who need to know. There are millions out there who sense something is wrong but can't quite put their finger on it. Who have the questions but lack the context. Who seek answers but don't know where to look. When you share this story, when you help someone see the truth, you are sparking another awakening. You are expanding the circle of awareness. You are contributing to the movement that will eventually expose these dark forces completely. Fourth, join the community of people investigating this. There are forums, groups, networks of dedicated researchers who are documenting these connections, who are compiling evidence, who are supporting one another in the search for truth. You don't have to do this alone. And when conscious people unite, share information and insights, When they collaborate in investigation, the power of that community becomes exponential. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, remain vigilant. Stay informed. And above all, stay awake. Because the forces that made that deal in 1952 are still operating. They are still influencing decisions. They are still shaping global events. And the only defense we have as humanity is awareness. It's knowing what's happening. It's seeing through the manipulations. It's recognizing the patterns before it's too late to respond. Every decision you make matters now. Every choice about where you focus your attention. Every moment you choose truth over convenience. Every time you question instead of accepting blindly. These are not small acts. They are acts of spiritual resistance against the forces of darkness. They are declarations that you will not be controlled, will not be manipulated, will not be deceived. And here's something deep to consider. The fact that you're watching this right now. The fact that you made it to the end of this journey. The fact that you're open to this truth. It's not an accident. There are millions of people who would turn this off in the first few minutes, who would reject this information without a second thought, who would choose the comfortable illusion over the disturbing reality. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. You considered. And that says something important about who you are. You are someone who values truth over comfort. Someone willing to face hard realities. Someone brave enough to question the narratives most accept without thinking. That kind of courage, that kind of intellectual integrity, that kind of spiritual bravery is exactly what the world needs right now. It's exactly what will make the difference between humanity remaining unconscious or finally waking up to the forces that have operated in the shadows for so long. And think about the timing. 2025. 73 years after that fateful meeting in 1952. 3 generations of demonic influence operating through the structures of power. But also 73 years of accumulating evidence, of witnesses speaking out, of patterns becoming visible, of truth slowly emerging from the shadows. And now, at this moment in history, when control technologies are reaching unprecedented capabilities, when decisions about humanity's future are being made, when we stand at a civilizational crossroads, you have this knowledge. It's not coincidence. It's the exact moment. So what comes next? That's probably the question you're asking now. And here's the honest truth. No one knows exactly how this story will end. Because the ending hasn't been written yet. The ending is being decided now, in this moment, by the choices billions of people are making. By the truths that are being revealed. By the awareness that's growing. By the resistance forming against the forces of darkness. But one thing I do know. The power of these demonic entities depends on secrecy. It depends on ignorance. It depends on people not knowing what's really happening. And the more this truth spreads, the more people wake up, the more individuals see through the illusions, the weaker that power becomes. Light dispels darkness. It always has. It always will. The fact that you're watching this, that thousands of others are discovering this information, that the truth is spreading faster than ever before in human history. All of this means we're at a tipping point. A moment where humanity's collective consciousness can change fundamentally. Where we can shift from an unconscious species being manipulated to an awakened civilization, taking its destiny into its own hands. And you are part of that. Your awakening matters. Your awareness contributes to the whole. Your search for truth strengthens the movement. Your refusal to accept lies weakens the power of darkness. Never underestimate the impact one awakened person can have. Because truth is contagious. When you share with one person and they awaken, that person shares with others. And so the light spreads, one awakening at a time, until there are no more places for the shadows to hide. They made a pact with a demon in 1952. They believed they could control the situation. They thought the technological benefits would be worth the price. They imagined they could keep the secret forever. But 73 years later, the truth is emerging. Witnesses have spoken. Evidence has been documented. Patterns have been recognized. And people like you are waking up to the reality of what really happened and what is still happening. The encounter in 1952 was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. The beginning of a demonic influence operating through the highest structures of power in the world. But it was also the start of something they didn't expect. The start of a trail of evidence. The start of testimonies that would eventually surface. The start of an awakening that is happening right now as you watch this. You are now part of that awakening. You know the truth most don't. You see the patterns most miss. You understand the connections most don't. And with that knowledge comes responsibility. The responsibility to keep seeking truth. To share what you've discovered. To join the community of awakened people. To remain vigilant. To never go back to comfortable ignorance now that you've seen reality. Don't let this information die here. Use this knowledge. Share it with those ready to hear. Leave your observations in the comments. Research for yourself. Question everything. They met with a demon in 1952. They are still working together, but now you know. And a conscious humanity cannot be controlled. Thank you for having the courage to look. The future depends on people like you.